Parents don't care about your rates. Parents don't care about your policies. Parents don't care about your scheduling. What they want to know is, can you make my child love music?
Welcome to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the place where teachers from around the world meet to share innovative ideas about music education. Listen and learn as we help you motivate your students, grow your income, expand your studio, and become a more creative piano teacher.
G'day everyone, it's great to be back with you for another weekly dose of your piano teaching inspiration. This is episode 90 of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, and I'd like to extend a special welcome to all my Inner Circle members. Thanks to everybody for tuning in today, wherever you are in the world. I know you're going to find this interview, the first of our business theme month interviews, really useful for you. My name is Tim Topham, and I'm the host of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, which is a place where you can get weekly inspiration, ideas, and teaching strategies to help you be the best teacher that you can be. Today's show notes and a full transcript are available at timtopham.com/episode 90. I am really happy to have a very special guest on today who knows business and piano studios and the combination of the two and how they work together and how to get the most out of them really well. I'll introduce him in just a sec, but just to let you know that today's episode, as I mentioned, forms the first in our new theme for this month of June 2017, which is all about business and such an important aspect for everyone to consider when it comes to their own teaching studios. There are so many ways that we can get more productive, that we can build our income, streamline the ways that we do things, and get the most out of our business while helping to serve as many students as we possibly can and do it as well as we can. So this month, stay tuned for some fantastic interviews, live shows with just me, fantastic blog posts, guest posts as well. And I know that in particular, you're going to love today's freebie download, which has been created by the person who I'm about to introduce and who gives so much great value in this podcast interview. Not only that, he's actually created a step-by-step studio marketing guide. And I'm just flipping through it now. This is an 8-page PDF, which he is giving away for absolutely free, with a special invitation at the end for those who have found it really helpful. So it's about getting clear on exactly what you want with your marketing, talking about goal setting, committing to the effort that you need and the kind of results you should expect. We're talking about surveys and marketing messages, improving your website. It's all there. This is a free download available at the show notes, timtopham.com/episode 90. Please go ahead and download that. And I hope you enjoy today's interview with my special guest. My guest today is a studio owner, curriculum creator, business coach, marketing consultant, and a blogger. He has a degree in music education and teaches around 100 kids a week in his studio in Indianapolis, and also has a 4-year-old son to keep him busy. I don't know how he does all this, but I think we might be finding out a bit about it in today's podcast. What people probably don't know about my guest is that he likes playing strategy board games online. He knows a little bit of German and spent much of his childhood building elaborate Lego worlds in his basement. Daniel Patterson, welcome to the show today.
Hey, Tim, it's good to be here.
Now, look, you've been building quite a reputation online recently for helping music teachers market and grow their studios through your blog, which is growyourmusicstudio.com. How did you get into this area?
Good question. So I graduated from university in 2004. And, like most people leaving school, my thought was, how am I going to build a studio? I had this wild belief that I would have, what I considered at the time a full studio would have been 40 students. I thought, it'll just take me a couple months. This will be so simple. I've just got to tell people that I'm offering piano lessons, and people are just going to be beating my door down to take lessons from me. And of course, it doesn't work that way. And so that really began a long journey of me trying to figure out what I needed to do to get the word out. And a big part of that was a curriculum that I wrote called the Piano Express. I co-wrote it with a friend of mine, and we went to school together. His name was Greg Genter. And we wanted to find a solution to what piano teachers find to be the worst time of year, the summertime. We thought, what can we do to make summer the best quarter of the year? And he and I worked together for quite a bit of time, for 6 months leading up into the summer of 2005, writing a curriculum. And we thought, again, it's the naivete of youth. I was 23 at the time, I think. And we thought, oh, we're gonna be millionaires. No one's doing anything like this. We have this week-long camp that we're gonna just announce to the children of the community, and we're just gonna get flooded with children and teaching and accolades and money. Well, we had 7 kids that first summer. I think the universe had a laugh at us. And in the aftermath of that summer, although it was a great experience and it was a good testing ground for that curriculum, which has continued to go on to this day, it was a good testing ground. But in the aftermath of that, we divided up the work. And the part of the work that came to me was, Daniel, figure out how for next summer for us to get more students. You be the marketing guy, and I will be the curriculum development guy. And we're going to kind of split ways here, and I'm going to continue developing the curriculum. You do the business end of it. And that is really the beginning of the journey. Like I often do in projects that I'm involved in, I kind of threw myself headlong into it, read books. And, over time, over the course of 5 years, we grew that camp every summer. In the 5th year, in that summer, we had 175 kids that we got brand new.
Wow.
With some of the marketing that we had been doing together. And of course, there, word of mouth as well. And Greg was on the ground also working. It wasn't just, that I created some amazing ad campaign. Obviously, it was a lot more organic than that, but that's kind of the background. That's how I got into this. And then really what led me to do the blog was, at a certain point, I switched from kind of what I'll call traditional marketing over into digital marketing, online marketing, and really wanting just to help people, help teachers, help music schools. Because of what we did, more and more music schools kind of sought me out and kind of asked how we did what we did. And I finally decided, about a year and a half ago to get online and to start telling people about what I'd learned.
That's a fantastic story. So you went from 7 kids to 170 kids in 5 years, did you say?
Yes, in the summer camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was just piano, or was it all instruments?
Only piano.
Wow, that's great. And I think that continues to run today. Is that right?
That is correct. Eventually, that summer camp became a feeder program into a year-round after-school program that runs now, that has 250 kids that are seen year-round in kind of the full year version of that curriculum, which I did not in any way create. I have to give all the credit to Greg for that. I know he's going to be watching this. But I still do the marketing for that school as well as the scaled-down version of summer camp, because we don't run it the way we used to back when we were young guys who were single. Yeah. I used to actually go out for the summer and live with my friend where we ran it, because he lives in Virginia. I'm here in Indiana. And I would go. We'd been best friends in college. I went out there and lived with him for the summer just so we could run the camp together.
It's a very cool story. And we did last year on the blog and podcast we did a month-long focus on summer camps. So it was really interesting hearing what other teachers are doing. So if people listening are interested in this, because I know this is a great way to generate income in that slow period, then we'll put a link in the show notes to some of the articles that we had last year on that, because they're just as relevant now as they were then. Interestingly enough, your story correlates very similarly to mine. When I first started a business, I ran a dance party business in one of my towns here. It was for under 18s. And I thought that, and on my first event, we hired this huge, it was like 2 double basketball court sized stadiums, lighting rigs, DJs, smoke machines, videographers. Like, it was ridiculous. Expecting 1,500 to 2,000 kids.
Yeah.
and we got 25 on that first one. And I know exactly that feeling. But it's a great lesson learned in where, starting small and growing organically. So
yeah, well, that really is a good point, because in many ways I feel fortunate to have started my career the way I did, because as a 22 or 23-year-old, I was asking myself, how the heck do we attract 200 students to this program? And it got me to asking questions that I don't think I would have been asking if I hadn't set such an unrealistic goal. And I was asked those questions at 22, 23, and I think that in a way did shape the way that I learned and shaped or the goals came about because of the questions I was asking.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And lots of members at the moment, and people who are reading the blog and listening to the podcast, are interested in growing their studios. It's definitely a key need for lots of people. But I still think there's an issue with teachers and talking about money. and many underpaying themselves or not knowing what to charge and still not thinking of themselves as business owners. We're effectively little CEOs of our enterprises, right? So I'm wondering if you've got any tips. Is there a way that we can start changing that mindset of, I don't want to talk about money, just, it's okay.
Sure. So, when you talk about money, I think about, well, like I said earlier, are the months a hard time financially? Are parents paying late? Are you not being paid what you're worth? And so you're talking about changing mindset. I think one of the main things here, well, I have two thoughts. The first one would be just ownership. The idea that we experience the problems that we allow into our life. So if parents are paying late, and before you think I'm a heartless monster, understand I'm going someplace with this. But if parents are paying late, I'll make it safe here. If parents are paying late, that's on me. If the summer months are hard, that's on me. If I am not being paid what I'm worth, that's on me. In some ways, I think that we as humans, just from a psychological standpoint, I think, and I know because this is in my background, I know this from a decade ago, that I liked to blame things outside of me. So if a parent is paying me late, it's easy for me to go home or to finish my day and sit and grumble about those parents for paying me late. But the truth is that I'm kind of making a fantasy, so to speak. It's not true because I'm allowing that to happen. You're following me there, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So
it's about kind of taking ownership of the problem, not going onto a Facebook group and complaining about it, but actually going, okay, how do I fix this? And getting ahead.
Yeah. And see, the sick thing about it is when we actually do blame things outside of us. So if we blame the parents, what we're actually doing is giving up control of the situation. And that is actually that is the least empowering thing you can do in that situation. So I think it's ultimately a blessing and opportunity to realize that we have the opportunity to change what's happening, because that gives me as a teacher and, anybody who's listening to this podcast, you, Tim, like that gives us the opportunity to take control of the situation, to take charge of the situation and make something really, truly special and unique. There's no one like me on the planet. There's no one like you. There's no one like anyone listening. If they will own the situation, they will create something that no one else can create.
Yep, totally. And for something like people paying late, surely, there's many simple solutions to that uses technology these days that perhaps teachers aren't availing themselves of, right? In automatic payment cycles or charging fixed monthly fees and things like that.
Right. So there's the mindset side of it. So there's the mindset of, okay, literally, this is on me. That then makes you think about practical things. And this is what I love because I'm a really lazy person. And I don't like.
I don't know how that's possible.
No, I am. I'm the laziest person, and I know you're going to know what I'm talking about because I like to get way out ahead of a problem so that I never have to experience it. So, for instance, well, you just said it there. The practical side of the mindset that this whole situation is on me and I can fix this. I truly believe that. What am I going to do then? Well, then there's all these tools that are available to us. So, even in my studio, I use automatic payment software. And when people sign up, I just have them sign up for their bank account to be drafted every month. Yep. They don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about it. It just comes out. Do I have to pay a tiny fee to make that happen for each transaction? Yes, I do. And maybe you don't want to pay a tiny fee as a teacher. But if you don't want to pay a tiny fee, what you're actually saying is I want people to pay me late. And it's just having this idea that there are tools out there to make this happen. But on the other hand, if you choose not to avail yourself of the tools, or you choose not to take a hard line on the policy, or if you choose not to the day after that the payment was due to go in and add the late fee to everyone that's late, or maybe it's automatically added. If you don't do that, again, you only experience what you allow.
And for those who are interested, probably the simplest software solutions just on that while we're there is things like Music Teachers Helper, My Music Staff for independent studios. I think they do automatic billing, I'm pretty sure. Do you have any other ones that you'd get teachers to consider?
Well, I'm not being paid to endorse this, but I just use QuickBooks. I know another good one is FreshBooks. I think FreshBooks is also kind of the trendy, cool one. QuickBooks is kind of the old, boring one. So once
That's
again,
exactly true.
just going back to the old and boring thing.
Do they do automatic payments? Once parents set up their credit cards, you can just bill them automatically?
Yep.
Perfect. Yep. Great.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right. You've got a blog post about, and it's titled How to Make $10,000 a Month Teaching Piano. What are most of us doing wrong when it comes to generating more revenue from our teaching?
I think the question I would ask to you about generating more revenue, are you just saying, are you talking programmatic elements? Are you talking about, working more? I hate to turn the tables on you and ask you a question in return, but what are you thinking when you say that?
Oh, not at all. Well, I'm just thinking for many teachers, $10,000 a month of income is a lot more money than they're probably making at the moment. So sure. I guess my question is, can you give us a quick summary of a couple of the ways to think about your teaching or taking it in new directions to head to that figure?
Okay. Yes. Okay. I think the first and obvious one, and this, oddly enough, I started out with marketing, but teachers being teachers, they quickly began asking me how I taught. And so I've tried to keep my blog on topic, but I have a growing number of teachers every month who email me privately and say, well, tell me what you're doing on the teaching side. And I'm like, no, that's not what this is about. But, I'm a nice person, so I talk to them anyway. But getting to that point, what a lot of people have come to realize was, and again, I feel fortunate at the beginning of my career that I was asking the questions that I was, but I wrote a group curriculum when I was 23 years old. And I've been doing group teaching now for almost a decade and a half. And I would say if you're wanting to shoot for that level of income, there's only probably a couple ways to do it. And I know, and we're both good friends with Leela at 88 Piano Keys, and she talks about off-bench time. There's other models of teaching, partner lessons, all this sort of thing. I'm going to put a disclaimer on the statement I'm about ready to say. It's not about the money, but if you truly want to start getting to that level of income, you're really going to have to take seriously group teaching or using technology to leverage your time, which will allow you to see more children. And for me, my choice to convert my private studio into a group studio was really two things. One, the marketing was so effective that I had a waiting list, and it just made no sense to let children who really wanted to begin piano and who I felt that I had something really unique and special for them to do. It made no sense for those kids not to get a shot. The second thing is that when I started teaching, I was a single man. When I switched over into the group in my private studio, I was newly married. We had thoughts about having a child, having multiple children. And I knew that I was going to need to find a way to work less because I was working crazy hours. And I knew
so many of us do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now I see, because of the group structure, I see, depending on the time of year and depending on how much I want to be working at the time, I see anywhere from 90 to 100 kids per week in 21 and a half hours because of the group structure that I have. And so if you're wanting to generate more revenue from your studio, you're going to have to do two things. You're going to have to get control of your marketing and how many people you are inciting to contact you every month. And the second thing is you've got to find a place to put all those kids. And the two things that people often go to is either working more hours or hiring staff. And what I will tell you is I have done both of those things, and teaching in groups by myself is much, much better.
Why is that?
Well, a couple things. Working crazy hours, I don't think I have to explain why that isn't great.
No. Yeah, I mean the staff versus doing yourself.
Right. So with the staff, there is a sense that that's more administrative time. The administrative time that I do in my studio is probably less than 10 hours a month for 90 kids. And that's probably an overestimate. With staff, when we would run the summer camp or with staff in the year-round after-school program, you have staff meetings, you have to do quality control, you have training, you have all these things. And I'm not saying that isn't a bad thing. I'm not saying it's, not good to build into a new generation of teachers. Far be it for me to say that. I just had different goals, and I wanted to keep it to just myself. Even though I was comfortable working with staff, and even though we had in the summer camp, we had multiple staff members that Greg and I hired together. Just for me, I like doing things alone, and that's my preference. A different teacher might have a different a different thought. But that still doesn't mean you can't use a group structure where you're leveraging your time. So for instance, I work with music schools as a marketing consultant or as a business coach. And oftentimes I'll come to these schools and they have to have 10 to 15 teachers to see 250 kids. So they have to have 10 to 15 teachers to handle that load. And so the business owner oftentimes is out of teaching completely because all their time is being taken up in managing staff and phone calls and all the paperwork and all this stuff. The Piano Express studio that I've kind of been referring to, and in my own private studio and kind of the way that I would run it, were I to hire someone else, the Piano Express studio has only 2 master teachers to see 275 kids a week. And then they have a handful of assistants. But they have 2 teachers that can handle that load because they're seeing 24 kids an hour with 2 master teachers and a handful of assistants. And so even if you have an aspiration for a big music school, you still can cut down on the admin time. You can cut down on a lot of the hassles that can come from juggling the schedules of 15 teachers. How are we going to get makeups in? It affects and impacts so much. And if you can leverage technology, or you can leverage ingenuity, you can leverage the group structure, then you can still have that large music school if it's your desire, and you can do it with fewer people.
24 kids in one sitting sounds like a lot. I've been a classroom teacher, and I know it's hard enough when they're sitting at desks with pens, let alone keyboards making sound.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole nother level of pedagogy, isn't it? Teachers would have to take a completely different approach to be able to do that.
Yeah. And what I will tell you is that choosing to do group, and again, I've talked to a lot of teachers. I've worked with a lot of teachers because of the blog. What's so funny is that, again, I got into this to talk about marketing, and people kept asking me about the teaching side of it. And what I began to realize over time is that, of course, the teaching side plays into the marketing side and the business side. Of course it does.
Yeah.
What's really fascinating to me, and what I've communicated to people, is moving from being a one-on-one teacher to a group teacher made me a much better teacher. And I know we're kind of going a little bit far afield here of the question you asked me, but here we're going. It made me a better teacher because I did not have the luxury to clean up messes after myself. In other words, a decade ago, when I was teaching one-on-one, if the kid didn't get legato in the first lesson, I give all these flowery explanations. We do all these creative things. We draw slurs. We take 5 minutes to explain the concept of legato. If they didn't get it, I knew, we'll get it next week. We can get it next week. And I would almost say, I'm not talking about anybody else, but I would say for myself, there was almost kind of a laziness where, I have all the time in the world. And what's so funny to me is you'll go on Piano Teacher Central and you see so many teachers saying things like, I just don't have enough time in lessons to get things done. And I think to myself, try teaching 5 kids in an hour and see where that goes. I had to become very efficient to be able to do what I do. Oh my gosh, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I can't go back. Now seeing 5 kids an hour and seeing the social atmosphere that's developed, seeing how I've trained kids to become independent learners, because that's really what makes the group structure work, at least for me. It's a little bit different for Greg. He does a slightly different version of this model. I know it's different for other group teachers, but for me, one of the first things I teach kids is how to become independent learners so that it's more of a cooperative effort. They're not looking to me to provide the energy. They're not looking to me to provide the answers. They're looking to themselves. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's a great model. Yeah.
And there are a number of expert teachers in our community and members as well who are doing group or moving towards it in some way. Some are just trialing partner lessons or crossover periods of time where 2 kids share a little bit of a lesson.
Yeah.
There's many different ways to do it. And I guess one thing to stress is that if teachers are interested in this idea of group teaching, it doesn't mean that they have to hire a massive studio, buy 300 keyboards, change everything about what they do. There is a progression they can make to dipping their toe in the water and moving towards this, right? Or would you say, actually, no, you should just change the whole thing?
I think that goes back to the mindset thing we were talking about earlier. A very wise person who's been a mentor to me said, you cannot skip your own evolution. Things come at the right time. And I think, I've worked with teachers who've wanted to dive right into it, and I've helped them do that. I've helped them convert their entire studio over to group lessons in less than a month. I've had other teachers who really want to dip their toe in the water and do like a pilot group and just make sure that they felt comfortable themselves. I don't judge either one personally. And I think this is what one of your inner circle members actually asked this question. Like, I think they asked something to the effect of, can you tell us the mistakes you made? Can you tell us the mistakes you made in the early days? I don't know if I would necessarily call this a mistake, but what I will say is that this is humbling to me, in a way, is that I had been doing the group structure in the camp format for a couple of years, felt expert at it, had written an entire curriculum. We'd written entire workbooks on it. But when it came time to convert my own studio over, I was very cautious because I was really terrified of parents quitting because I was changing the game on them. So I very weakly, I would never do it this way now. In a very weak fashion, I kind of approached all the parents and said, hey, would you like to do this? I was very weak about it. I wasn't really thinking in a good marketing or business sense at that time.
Well, you weren't confident in it yourself.
I wasn't confident enough.
Yeah.
Exactly. I wasn't confident enough to really go for it. And it took me a couple years to convert my studio over into the group format. And I really didn't. I started converting it in 2008. And every semester I had like one more. So I didn't get up to my current number of groups, which is around 20 right now, until like 2011 or 2012. And so here's the humbling part, is that the funny thing now is I now know how to do it. And so I now have teachers who just come to me and say, hey, can you help me do it? And I've helped them do it in a month. And I was like, man, I wish I could go back in time like Michael J. Fox and like tell myself how to do this because I could have saved myself a whole thing. But at the end of the day, I couldn't skip my own evolution. I could not be in the place I am now if that had happened. And I needed to learn those lessons. And I'm thankful for those lessons. But I'm also happy to say that, because of the internet, because of blogs, because of all the resources out there, there's literally, understand that I'm saying this in the nicest way possible. There's really no excuse for any teacher not to have the career they want because there's so many resources out there. There's so many things, first off, there's this amazing website called Google. You can go type anything into it and it will tell you how to do something. And if that isn't enough for you, there's amazing people like Tim Topham who have, the inner circle. There's people like Leela who does her consultations and teaches people how to do off-bench stuff. I mean, there's just an embarrassment of riches in terms of resources that are out there now. There's so many teachers, like you, like myself, like a lot of these teachers that are out there helping teachers build the careers they want. And I think now there's this sense that people probably they can't skip their evolution, but they can seriously speed up the timeline because of the resources that are out there.
Okay, let's just talk about marketing for a second. Keeping in mind, of course, that there's, as you alluded to already, there's not a lot of point in marketing if you can't take kids on, or you've got the wrong, you're full, or you've got the wrong way of teaching, or whatever it is. But let's just talk about online versus offline at the moment. What do you believe is the most important for piano teachers these days? Okay.
Tim, how technical can we get for your listeners?
Well, let's go a little bit under the surface, but don't go too deep because we won't have time, that's all.
Okay, great. Okay, that's helpful. I am 100% digital now. I have not run traditional marketing, paper and ink marketing, whatever you want to call it. I have not run that in probably 4 or 5 years because what I found, and I actually wrote a whole blog post on this, or at least referenced in a blog post from middle of 2016. Maybe we could link that up in the show notes, and people could read that. Since we want to be conscious of time, if they want to kind of get the full story, they can get it there.
Right.
But to kind of go back a little bit in my history, I think it's far more interesting to hear a story than it is just to hear some boring data. So let me tell you 2 stories. When I was 23 years old and trying to build my studio and was naively thinking that I could do it, eventually I ran into the fact that, this isn't working. I'm going to have to figure out a way to do this. And what I chose to do was pay which for a 23-year-old was an astronomical sum, but pay $4,000 to run a postcard mailing campaign to people in a couple zip codes around where I live to get the word out. That cost me $4,000. It got me in front of 3,000 people 2 times. And out of that, I got, I think, 7 or 8 students. And so, at the rate that I was charging, Was it worth it? Absolutely. I paid back. I made my money back in, in 5 months, maybe 5 or 6 months. And then after that point, those students, it was just profit, obviously. Fast forward to a couple years ago, the best advertising campaign I ever put on for my own personal studio, not for the Piano Express, not for any of these studios that I work with. For my own personal studio, I got my studio in front of almost 8,000 people and got somewhere between 30 and 35 students out of it for $600 using Google AdWords.
Wow. It's so different, isn't it?
It's so different. And there's a couple things about going digital. Is one, there's flexibility. You can turn it on and off. So if you make a commitment to a newspaper to put an ad in a newspaper or in a newsletter, or, oh, I'm going to buy something from the local whatever, like the baseball team, I'm going to have my logo on the outfield of the local baseball team, or I'm going to sponsor a Little League team. You're locked in. You spend the money. You can't turn it off. With something like AdWords or Facebook ads, you can turn that on and off depending on how many students you need at the moment. So there's times when I've been full and I've been able to go in and with a click of a button, I'm not spending money anymore. And if I lose a couple students or a family moves away, or one of my overcommitted athletic students breaks something or sprains a wrist, I turn on the ads and we're off to the races. It's predictable. And honestly, and this is the big one, it's just where people's attention is now.
Yep.
And I could really go into this. I'm not, but I don't even look at my mail anymore. I just throw it straight into the trash. I don't even have TV anymore. I only have Netflix. So all those brands that want to get my attention, they're not, they can't even get into my house. I have I have ad block on, so I don't even see any ads when I browse the web. But if I want a product, I go to Google, I type things in, and what's amazing for piano teachers, you get a Google AdWords account, you buy the word piano lessons or whatever instrument you teach, and if someone types that in, they see your studio, and here's the beauty of it, you don't even pay for them to see it. You only pay if they click on it. So someone who's actually looking for piano lessons, as opposed to me just sending out 3,000 postcards, probably 95% of which just got thrown straight in the trash without even consideration. And then another 4%, they thought about it and then they got distracted. You just can't beat it.
Yep.
It is 5 to 10 times more expensive to do traditional advertising than it is digital. And it's just the future.
I think it's about targeting too. You know, when you put your postcards down the street, how many actually are families who have children at the right age, who have an instrument, who have a desire to learn? Whereas the thing I love, and I do, my advertising is Facebook ads, and you can get so descriptive about the person that you're trying to target. It's literally remarkable. It's also terrifying that Facebook has that much information about us all, of course. So I think, that's it's not a scattergun approach. It is incredibly laser focused. You're just sending it and putting your ads in front of the people who actually might be interested.
Yeah. Now, one other thought, because I want to be sensitive to everyone who's in your audience. I know that you have a fair number of music school owners. If you're in a large music school, there would be what I would call an order of operations. I would start with AdWords. I would do Facebook ads. And then if you're leveraging those to the max, like if you're spending just as much money as you can and you still are trying to grow, then I would probably go to some of those other channels. You know, if you've used up AdWords, if you've used up Facebook, if you use up Instagram, which I don't think a private studio teacher could ever exhaust a budget on those three platforms. But if you're a large music school, 500 students or more, or aspiring to be to that size, then maybe you consider going to some of those old-fashioned traditional, paper and ink type marketing channels. But by and large, if you have a studio under 100, I stay full only doing AdWords. I will only occasionally run Facebook ads just for fun.
I can think of many other things, Daniel, I'd prefer to be doing than running Facebook ads, but that's okay. That's you and me. I've got some member questions we're going to get onto shortly. Okay. I went into my community and asked my members about business-related questions that they'd like to ask you, because many of them know you. Just before that, have you got just a couple of things teachers could do right now to help grow their music studio? Apart from changing to a group teaching format, because we've kind of covered that, there's 2 or 3 other little things that they could try to make an impact?
Right. Okay. All right. Interesting. The first one isn't tactical per se, but I think it's really important. Run a survey to the families in your studio and ask them why they signed up. Ask them what frustrates them about piano lessons. Ask them this one's the big one. Ask them what they were concerned about or what they were afraid of before they started lessons. So it's helpful if you do this not long after they join, but it'll be surprising if you even ask someone who's been there for years. I've had parents be like, oh, I know exactly what I thought. If you can get in touch if you can have empathy for what your parents are thinking, so let alone, not seeing the parents as an adversary, but if you can actually begin to care for the parents and care for what they're thinking, it's remarkable how effective your advertising will become when you begin to realize, oh, the kinds of things that I'm putting on my website, parents don't really care about when they're looking for piano lessons. And what I would say is the vast majority of piano teachers, the things that they put on their website, and that's kind of my number 2 there, the vast majority of things that piano teachers put on their website, most parents don't care about. They say they care about them, but they don't. I have had the opportunity now to literally survey thousands of parents, and I've got spreadsheets upon spreadsheets of data that I've collected from all these music schools that I've worked with, where one of the first things I did when I went in to help them with their marketing was I ran a survey to the families there just so I could get the music school owner on board with what I was going to be doing. Because my experience was they disagreed with the kinds of things that I was saying we should be saying on their website as opposed to what they were actually saying on their website. And so some of those things, just to be very brief, would be parents don't, again, it sounds like they do. Parents will tell you they do, but deep down they don't. Parents don't care about your rates. Parents don't care about your policies. Parents don't care about your scheduling. What they want to know is, can you make my child love music? That's what they really care about. That's what's deep down. They disguise it by saying they care about all that other stuff, but they don't. What they really want to know, they want to believe. And if you can get them to believe, they will be on your side forever. They really want to believe that you have something special for their child there and that their child will enjoy and love the experience of learning music. What I have found from surveys, I'm on my soapbox, Tim, I don't know if you can tell, but what I found from surveys is that parents don't know how to select a good teacher, and they actually see the teacher as an adversary. They actually believe that that they're hoping against hope that their child will end up loving music despite the fact that they have to go through lessons. So if you can show a parent through all your marketing that you're doing something unique and dare I say it, magical in that studio, then you will have an ally. And well, I'll end it there. The third thing being, of course, that you have to have an amazing product. I mean, your piano lessons are a product, and it has to be good. So you can't just promise the world and not deliver. You actually have to deliver. But I mean, I'm more than willing to come back, but that would be the topic for an entirely other podcast. So
no, it's great, brilliant. Well, fantastic summary of those important things, and I love that you hit on the website issue. We do a lot of talking about that in the members area too, and I often go through and help people. I'll just go on their website, I'll record myself using it and tell them what I think about it. So I think there's a lot of work that we can do on websites, because that's ultimately, if we're going to be doing online advertising, the place that people are going to land is our website. It's got to be good. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, look, I think let's get on to some member questions. Is that cool with you?
Yeah. How much time do we have?
I reckon we've got about 10, 15 max.
I can stay here all night, Tim. You just tell them to stop.
All right. So the first one, and this is great that we're linking to it straight after the discussion about websites. It's about testimonials. Mm-hmm. So Rachel says, how do you ask for testimonials and get them to say what you want them to say? I know that sounds bad. I mean, say constructive, helpful things about you, not just Rachel is lovely and a great teacher. Okay. I think it depends on the questions you ask them. I think it can be helpful to prime the pump by giving them a couple starter questions. I have some specific ones. They're not coming to mind right now, but things like, can you tell me a story about something positive that happened in the studio, or what was the biggest thing that surprised you? So in other words, when you send an email to the parent and give them a link to go and fill out your testimonial form or however you do it, say to them, hey, as you're writing it, can you tell a little story in the testimonial or the music studio review that you
of something positive that happened with little Sally during lessons during the last year. That can be incredibly valuable. I know you've probably written things on this, but I actually wrote an entire blog post about this in the spring of 2016. And I don't know if you want to link it up in the show notes, but I had an entire blog post called The Testimonial Technique, How to Grow Your Studio Using Parent Reviews. So if you want to link that up there,
yeah, let's do that.
I give tons of recommendations, even on like plugins that you can use, because another thing that Rachel mentioned there was that, they kind of look fakey, maybe, that, how do you prevent it from looking fake?
Yes.
What you're really talking about there is a testimonial is a credibility marker. It's social proof. And I think that term has become more widely known. So I don't think I need to really explain what that means. But so Tim, you have social proof. You've got a podcast, you've got a Facebook presence, you've got pictures of you speaking at conferences. I mean, that's all social proof.
And I ask for testimonials as well. So I encourage anyone who has a website, particularly if you're trying to sell something to parents about your studio, which is what we're all doing, have some testimonials and have smiling faces. That's what you need.
Exactly. Yeah. And so if you don't want, if you just have like one testimonial there and it's on a really dumpy looking website, that's going to look a little janky. It might look a little suspect, almost as if you'd written it. But if you've got testimonials on your site and you've got testimonials on Google and maybe Thumbtack and maybe on your Facebook page, and you've got tons of pictures of smiling children, the overall experience feels way more authentic. People just know it in their guts when something feels fake. And you'd have to be a psychopath, I think, to go about faking all of that. And you can't, there's just some stuff you can't fake. And so if it's all there, it makes everything, it looks each individual element look more credible.
Got it. Cool. All right. Linda lives in a small country town of 1,500 people with 7 piano teachers, 2 of whom are qualified.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She's wondering just any general marketing tactics for people in small towns like that.
Okay. Marketing tactics in small towns.
It's going to be so heavily word of mouth, I imagine, for communities like that, right?
I would say so. I think one thing Linda can do is that with 7 other teachers, or 7 teachers total in 1,500, I think it becomes doubly or triply important to create something really good, to create something really unique. I think of Melody Bober. I think most people know who she is. She lives in a rural town in Minnesota. And I feel bad for any other teacher who had the great misfortune to be born in that town and wanted to be a piano teacher with Melody Bober, who's internationally famous, because she has an incredible program. I got to go to an all-day workshop with her once where she described how she did lessons in her studio. And quite frankly, it puts me to shame in terms of the creativity that she deploys. The kids come, they stay. She is known. People drive from really far to come teach her studio or to come learn at her studio, and then they never leave. Have a really creative program. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, differentiating yourself from everyone else is just crucial, I think. And I think about my own work, although I'm not marketing myself for my own studio so much because I don't want too many private students at the moment. People would know that I don't teach to an exam syllabus. They know that I teach a lot of teenage boys and can keep them occupied and motivated.
That's cool.
And they know I teach creative pops, chord composing kind of thing. So I've got a little positioning for that. And I would encourage other teachers, as you've said, to find that point of difference and use that as their brand and their marketing.
Yeah.
I like it.
Couldn't agree more.
On a similar tack, we've got a question from Cherie who says, I moved to a new city 3 years ago. I found some success on Facebook group advertising. I'm wondering about creating posts that really compel people to take action. What text can you use that help people recognize that they want to have you and only you as a teacher? Often people will ask how much I charge, and then you sometimes don't hear from them again. I'll never be the cheapest option, so I'm determined that I'm going to try and be the best teacher in town. It's exactly what we were just talking about. Any tips for Cherie?
Yeah. I think in this answer, what's funny is throughout our conversation here, we've been touching on different ideas, and I really feel like we're really kind of encapsulating them all with this question. And that would be that, if you differentiate yourself as a teacher, you have that creative program, and then you know how to communicate the value of what you're doing, because that's a huge thing. You can have the best whatever in town, but if you don't know how to communicate it in a way that a parent can hear, no one's going to know about you. And of course that goes to the heart of what she's asking there, because she's saying, how do you create posts that compel people to take action? I think, what would a good post look like in a Facebook group? Well, it probably needs to have a picture of a child in it. It probably needs to have a picture of a child having fun, maybe playing the instrument. Certainly, and this is the kind of the common wisdom, and like you said, we can go a little bit under the surface here in terms of getting technical, but I read a bunch of boring, dry marketing blogs outside of the field of piano, and what they'll say is, if you aren't testing 4 or 5 different images every time you do a post, then you're not doing it right. I think you try 4 or 5 different pictures and see which one works the best, see which one parents respond to the most, which one they click on the most. I think that you just, in the text that accompanies that post, I think you write something about that child's experience. You write it in really vivid and bold terms. And this is huge. This is huge. And this goes down to like the core of what marketing is that when you write anything on your website, when you write anything in an ad, when you write anything on a Facebook post, or when you're just writing something for your Facebook page, talking about a student that is, passed into a new book, you always focus on the external, on the tangible, on the verifiable, on something that happens in the real world. We as teachers can often be in our heads. We as teachers often think in the abstract world. And so we talk about all these things like, oh, kids come here, they love music. Okay. This is what the parent, when they read that at home, this is what happens. And I know some people watch this by video, some people are listening. Just
that was a very plain, boring face Daniel put on.
Yes, a very slack-jawed look like, okay, kids love music. You have to explain what love looks like to a child. And I'm sure that you, at some point in your teaching career, have had a student that is in love with music, that it is their thing. And you look at how that child responds to music, you just observe them. Describe what you observe in that child. They are different. They act differently than other children. They talk differently. Okay? You have to describe that. You can't just leave it up to the imagination of the parent to translate what love is or what excitement is. You actually have to describe it. And if I could get anybody to do if I could give just one tip, it would just be to learn how to describe what is happening in your studio in vivid, bold, external, measurable terms. Not children go to the piano and play the piano. They go and they sit at the piano and they love to play their songs for 20 or 30 or 40 minutes every night. That is something that a parent would read and be like, oh, interesting. That is a world of difference from just these abstract concepts.
Yeah, or that they love playing for their grandparents when they come over, or they've got a new connection with their dad who plays guitar and they play along with him or something. Things like that, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, well, we're running out of time. Let's do two more questions quickly.
All right.
In order to teach group piano lessons, Catherine asks, do you have to have multiple keyboards?
This is my opinion. I think it's very, very right, but this is my opinion. I would say yes, of course. And let me further add to that. Make sure that they're digital so that you can plug headphones into them, because you can get a lot more versatility if you have the option to not only play out loud, but also to play plugged in.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Another question from a different Rachel this time. I'm trying to attract adults who can come during office hours to my studio. How would Daniel suggest I do that?
Okay. So this is exactly how I would do it. I would go, that is so specific that is going to be, there's a blessing and a curse here. There's a pro and a con. The con is that's so specific that you're looking for a very small subset of people. You're not just casting your seed to the wind and hoping that, you get a great crop. Boy, that was a really agricultural analogy. I don't even know where that came from. I live in the city, Tim.
You're chewing on a bit of hay right now.
For those who are not watching the video, they're really missing it because I've got like overalls, the straw hat. Okay, anyway. So the downside is that, yes, you're looking for a very specific kind of person that can feel frustrating. Like, how in the world am I going to find that people? I'm going to have to go knocking door to door to find them. But in that target is actually the best thing that could be true, because it is so specific that if there's someone out there who's actually looking for daytime piano lessons, if you advertise yourself as the teacher who teaches daytime piano lessons to adults, they will not consider one other person in the entire city.
Yeah.
If that is the offer you make. And so to that end, what I would do, I'm getting excited, I'm yelling again. to that end, what I would do is go to Google AdWords, create an advertising campaign for adult piano lessons. Buy those words from AdWords. It's very cheap to buy them. In the grand scheme of things, it's very cheap to buy them. And then create an ad that specifically mentions daytime adult piano lessons in the ad text. They click on that ad. You make a new page on your site. This is optional. You don't have to. If you really want to gear it up, you could make a page of your site. You don't have to. You can maybe just have like a general thing on your front page if you're not technically inclined. But going back to kind of the ideal, the way I do it, I would make a page on my site just for adult piano lessons. And then again, have that flowery description, have that really vivid, rich description of everything that they're going to be able to achieve and all the things they're going to be doing. And, you will have such success with that for the people who are looking for that. And the truth of the matter is, there was a time, I only teach children in my studio now. I used to teach it all. But there was a time that I taught tons and tons of nurses, because they would do evening shifts and they would come to piano lesson in the day. And, back before I was doing group lessons, this is when I did this, I would get one nurse. And for some reason, I don't know why, but all these nurses wanted to learn how to play an instrument. I guess they dedicated their life to medicine and didn't have time to have any kind of fun while they were in medical school. And now that they were out in the job and they had, comparatively a lot of free time, they wanted to enjoy art. They just wanted to enjoy life. And so I would tell them, I would say, hey, go tell all your nursing friends that I teach nurses during the daytime. And I would get some, word of mouth. But again, how do you get the first one? Yeah. How do you get that first one? And that is, really specifically targeting. Or, okay, and Tim, I'll be really brief here. Target adult piano lessons on a Facebook ad and only run it during the day when someone's at home.
Yeah.
Right? Don't run it all day long. Just run it in the morning time.
Yeah.
And only run it maybe to women ages 30 to 40. Maybe it's or 25 to 40. Maybe it's someone who's just out of college who wants to get back into it. They regret quitting when they were 13 because they were overcommitted, and now they want to get back into it. Or maybe it's a mom who their kid is just old enough now that, she's had her last, the youngest child's 4, and now she wants some me time for the next decade, or maybe 20 minutes of me time a day for the next decade. And she wants to do that with piano. Yeah. Run it during the day, run it in residential areas. You just can't lose.
It's just amazing how specific you can get with Facebook, and I assume Google AdWords probably similar. So yeah, great response for that. Let's do last question, picking up on the theme that we started with, which was summer lessons. It's another question from Catherine. She said, last year I did 2 summer sessions, July and August, so obviously in the States, so that families would feel like they had time for travel, etc., without committing to ongoing lessons. It worked well, except that most of the students did not continue once school started. Their schedules were full of soccer, at that point, sports. I think the question is, how can we ensure that students who we do great fun things with over summer continue into a more regular schedule?
First thought is assume it from the beginning. So when you first are contacted by that parent and you're responding to them, that's the perfect time to set the stage for, hey, my summer lessons lead into my fall program. They're going to get all these benefits, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This is all the fun they're going to have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that sets them up perfectly to go into my year-round program in the fall. And the good news is that I make it really convenient. I work it around your schedule. And, I send that email out at the beginning of July. I'm going to send that to you and just take their temperature. And if you're the kind of teacher, and I do this, if you have a trial lesson, if the parent says, oh, we're only doing it for the summer, you have the right not to take them and give that spot to someone else, So that's how I would do it. I would just begin to set the expectation from the very first contact with that parent that they're going to be in the fall lessons. And oftentimes, people will follow if you lead. Most people don't have a plan. If you have a plan and one that's beneficial for the child, a lot of times the parents will just go along with it, but you have to very strongly lead. You have to be 8 steps ahead, like I kind of mentioned, at the outset of the conversation.
And I remember when we did our focus on summer camps last year, we'll put a link to the podcast that we ran. One of the podcast guests was, I think she made it compulsory that as part of her being a student in her studio, you have to do one of the summer session weeks. And if you don't want to do that and you can't commit to it, then I'm sorry, but I've got a waiting list and you're going to lose your spot.
Yep.
So I know it sounds kind of harsh in some ways, but that was a good way for her to run it. So there's obviously a number of approaches you could take.
And can I just add one thing to that really quickly before we finish up here, to kind of go full circle and come back to the whole idea that, and I really love that all these people from your members area ask these questions, but to come kind of full circle back to the whole thing of marketing is that if I had one thing to say is that if you get control of your lead generation, if you get control of that, you literally have control over everything. You have control of your rates. You have control over what you can demand of parents. You have control over what you can say to parents is true about your studio. I'm getting to the point now where I'm requiring, I know you said, Tim said that you don't teach to an exam. I don't teach to an exam. I teach my own curriculum. But yet, just as kind of another credibility marker, I have a lot of my kids go through the Royal Conservatory Music Development Program. I'm actually a center representative for them. And I'm getting to the point where I'm going to make it compulsory. And the reason I can demand such output out of my students is that, and this might sound harsh, it's not, it's done lovingly. I'm willing to let some students just fall by the wayside if they're not willing to rise to that challenge. But the only reason I can do that is because I've gotten control of the marketing side, the business side. Getting control of that gives you so much leverage and so many problems in the teaching, so many problems with customer service, so many problems with what we call problem parents, so to speak, which I don't really like that phrase, but you can get control of that if you get control of the business side. And if I had to leave on a certain note or leave with a certain message, I think it would be that one, that when you get control of your marketing, when you get control of that, you really get control of your entire studio, including the educational portion, because you can just begin to demand more of students.
Nice way to wrap things up. Daniel, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for that.
I loved it, Tim.
If you want to become a member of my community and hang out with people like Daniel and me and these other members you've been hearing from, you can head to timtopham.com/community to find out more. And as I mentioned right at the beginning of the episode in the introduction, Daniel has created a fantastic free download for teachers to help them with these elements around marketing and growing their studio. So make sure you head to the show notes page to check that out, where you'll also find the links to everything we've talked about today. And to find out more about Daniel and the work that he's doing, you can head to growyourmusicstudio.com. Thanks so much, Daniel. I'll speak to you again really, really soon.
Bye.
See ya.
Ladies and gentlemen,
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We'd love to help take your teaching to the next level as a member of our supportive community. Use the coupon Piano Podcast for $100 off an annual membership of Tim's Inner Circle today. To find out more, head to timtopham.com/community.